Okay, we're live.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks, Nicky. How's yourself?
I'm doing very well. I uh I noticed your hat. Can you tell us a little bit about your hat?
Yeah, I noticed that you actually pointed out in the show notes that I am a veteran of Desert Storm. So I thought I'd just introduce myself as a former soldier of the British Intelligence Corps. I was an Arabic linguist, a specialist in the Middle East. Hence, I ended up in Desert Storm over in Kuwait and Iraq, well, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait and Iraq back in 1991. It's a long time ago now, 34 years. It's unbelievable. This is the beret, the green beret of the Intelligence Corps in the UK. This is our cap badge, which is known as the Rose and Laurel. And that's the coloured version, which I'm wearing on my chest there. So yeah, and that was the medal which Her Majesty awarded me for actually being in Operation Desert Storm way back in 1991. So yeah, so I speak Arabic, and I was a trained. I was an, my actual title in the British Army at the time. It's changed now, but it was operator, special intelligence brackets linguist. So I was also a trained research analyst. So this is probably what I'm doing really is setting up this interview tonight, because you will find that I've been doing a lot of research into the history of our way of eating. I'm not so hot on the science. I can just about pronounce beta hydroxybutyrate now and things like acetoacetate, but I'm much better on the history. I'm much more a man of words. I'm a straight A English type student, and I can translate from Arabic, French, and Spanish into English. As you know, I enjoy doing chat shows. So yeah, we can't all be scientists, but I try and hold my own in our world with my other skills, which is research and history. So here I am tonight. I'm very much looking forward to the next hour. I doubt it will be long enough, but we shall give it a go. We'll probably have some action in chat as well. I see Nancy's here and Bill's here, so yeah, the class are coming together. The class are coming together, Nikki.
Yeah, well, thank you for that fabulous introduction and letting us know a little bit more about you. And as we go along, we're going to learn more about you as well. Um, so the topic of today, would you like to introduce the topic and who you're going to be talking about?
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
so excited to learn.
So the broad issue here is the fact that we have a history. Our way of eating is not a fad diet, which came along with Sean Baker very recently. Our way of eating has been recognised, and it has been, should we say, it's been adopted and then rejected several times. We are back into the adoption phase now, whereas with the carnivore diet, and we're having massive success. But they are trying to reject us, as the medical industry is obliged to do, because it makes huge money out of pharmaceuticals, downstream medicine. So instead of trying to go back to the root cause and curing people, they want to manage sickness with a $1 trillion industry, which is the pharmaceutical industry. Now, what the people that we are going to look at tonight, and they are all from the 19th century. So that's all between the years of 1800 and 1899, basically. So quite a long time ago. We're going to look at three people who were heroes in our space back in those days. Now, it's really weird because obviously everybody's saying this is a very modern thing. This is a fad diet, won't last very long. But actually, it's been around for a very long time. Obviously, it's been around since prehistory because we mostly ate meat back in those days. But yeah, so it's a story of a Frenchman, an American, and an Englishman tonight, which is nicely international. And we're going to start off with the Frenchman. But just to say that there are heroes in our space who are still going today. They come through a long time. When we get into the 20th century, we look at the people who were doing the ketogenic studies on the epilepsy in children, right through to people like Professor John Yudkin, who recognised that sugar, not fat, was the problem. And obviously, there we nowadays we have our own influences as well. So there is a long history of heroes in our world, also a long history of villains. Boo, hiss. We'll be having a look at those somewhere down the line as well. Again, from the 19th century, we'll be looking at the likes of Ellen Goldwhite, who set up the Seventh Adventist Church, John Harvey Kellogg, Sylvester Graham, right through up until the modern day era when we have the likes of Ansel Keys and the Sugar Research Foundation. But we'll start off the first couple of episodes that we're going to do. We'll start off looking at the heroes from the 19th century. So the first chap we're going to have a look at tonight is a Frenchman. He was a member of the French nobility back in the Napoleonic Wars. He was the Surgeon General in Napoleon's armies, and he was considered to be the first of the modern day military physicians. Now, he had a huge influence on modern day medicine, in as much as that he created the triage system for basically grading injuries. Now, as a first aid worker, I know about triage. Basically, you're looking for people who aren't breathing to begin with. Then you're looking for people who are bleeding out. So that's how you prioritize casualties. So it was him that's actually created the triage system. Triage en français, parce que je parle français, I speak French, means sieving. So to trier something is to sieve something. So you basically grade, what you're doing is grading. So that was a very important element he brought into the modern medicine. The other one was the flying ambulance. So back in the day, it was very difficult actually getting casualties off the battlefield to the field hospital. Often it would be stretcher bearers, and the casualties would often be dead before they could be actually come under the attentions of the surgeons. So he basically invented the modern day ambulance, which was a team of horses with a carriage, and you gathered up your injured and you put them into the back of the carriage, and then they were galloped to the rear of the battlefield where the surgeons were waiting for them. So they got there much quicker, and it meant that many lives were saved because of it. However, how does he come into our world, the carnivore world? As we know,
That's what I'm curious about.
absolutely, but we have to set the scene. But as we know, all of us carnivores, we don't eat fruit, we don't eat citrus fruit, therefore we are all dying of scurvy. I'm waiting to die of scurvy. Rick, the 42-year carnivore, has been waiting for the heart attack and for scurvy for about 42 years now. It's incredibly disappointing, isn't it, that we're not all dying of scurvy? It's especially disappointing for those who would say that you need vitamin C to survive and not have scurvy. It must be really, really annoying for them to see us also very healthy and not with all our teeth jumping out. So, how did Dominique Larrey affect this? Well, he was the part of the Egypt campaign that Napoleon sent the very end of the previous century. And so in 1801, he found himself in the city of Alexandria, a city I know fairly well, and he was under siege from those devils, the British. We get everywhere, and unfortunately, he found himself on the wrong end of our bayonets back in 1801. Now, basically, as we know, a military siege, what you're trying to do is starve the incumbent garrison out. So they had very little fresh food, very little fresh fruit and vegetables. So scurvy started breaking out amongst the garrison who were besieged by the British in the town of Alexandria. And there was no way of treating scurvy with the citrus fruit or the fresh vegetables route. So then there was quite a lot of horses in the French army and also locally in Egypt, because obviously everything, all commerce, everything was done by horses. All transport was horses. So when the French garrison started running out of food, they had to actually scavenge their own horses and also the local population of horses. Now, one thing that Larry noted is that when fresh horse meat was consumed, and it had to be fresh, then scurvy started to disappear. The actual symptoms of scurvy were were ameliorated. They disappeared. So Larry
And that was
actually
horse. That was horse meat.
that was horse flesh. Absolutely, yeah.
Horse flesh.
Yeah, the flesh
Right.
of horses, basically, because the common misconception these days about scurvy is that meat has no vitamin C, which is wrong. Meat does not have a great deal of vitamin C, but it has enough to actually service the needs of a carnivore. Why do carnivores need less vitamin C than our carbohydrate eating friends? Because carbohydrates, sugars, and vitamin C have a very, very similar structure, and they compete for the receptors in the body. Now, glucose, carbohydrates is like the big brother, the big bully, if you like. So that always wins the battle for the receptors. I can't remember who it was, but somebody said it was like two men going through a revolving door, and the biggest guy will always push the little guy out of the way. However, if there is no glucose carbohydrate competing with vitamin C for those receptors in the body, then vitamin C, of course, will find those receptors. So as carnivores, we need a lot less vitamin C than our carbohydrate eating friends. So Larry discovered that basically there was enough vitamin C in fresh horse meat to A, prevent scurvy, and B, cure the symptoms of scurvy. And that is how the eating of French by the French of horse meat became very popular. It still happens today. I have eaten horse meat in France. Please don't tell my horse racing friends about that, because I'm sure they would regard me as some sort of cannibal. But I'm a great believer in wherever you go, you should try and adopt the local customs. It's only polite. So yeah, that's how horse meat became popular in France, and it's to a certain extent today, less so than in the past. So that deals with scurvy, vitamin C, and the great hero who was Dominique Jean Larrey, Larrey. If you wish to go and look him up, he is there on Wikipedia. He's there on several other platforms as well, and there he is, Dr Dominique Jean Larrey. Thank you for that, Nicky. That's a nice one of them. So yeah, he is there, and you can go and find him, and he's got quite a good write up. He was a hero of the Napoleonic Wars, and he lived until 1842. So he long survived he was at the Battle of Waterloo, but he long survived the Napoleonic Wars. He was born in 1766. So yeah, definitely one of the heroes of our space, because he discovered that fresh meat beats scurvy. So let's move on to the second hero of the 19th century, and that is the American, of whom I'm sure that most people here who are watching would have heard more about than me, because we are talking about the physician James H. Salisbury, famous for the Salisbury steak. Now, I've had to research him pretty much from scratch from yesterday, because I didn't really know too much about him, and I think we're going to find a picture of him hopefully fairly shortly. But we'll talk about him anyway, because he was he was born in 1823, and he lived through until the 20th century in 1905. He was most famous during the Civil War, because obviously the Civil War was a time of great distress to America, and there was very little food, very little healthy food to be had out around there. Now, I was under the impression that he actually invented the Salisbury steak, or he recommended the Salisbury steak in an attempt to mitigate the effects of scurvy. Now, that is under some question. My research has led me to believe that, well, it's in some doubt anyway, and that more likely it was the general bad diet that the troops were going through, which included dysentery, because dysentery and such disease as cholera can go through an army and can kill far more men than combat. So there was general digestive ill health in during the Civil War. So he actually came up with the idea that the Salisbury diet, which was a meat and water diet, it was very, very meat heavy, It was basically ground beef was served up in large quantities, and he found that it corrected the digestive issues that were killing the soldiers. He received a lot of pushback from that, but the most interesting stuff for us, and I think most of us here are going to be part of the Kilts Mighty tribe, and we all know that Dr. Kilts is very keen on the idea of plants are poisonous, plants are toxic. Now, James H. Salisbury knew this. He knew that the plant toxins were actually very bad for you, that they were disrupting the digestive system. Now, looking through it, I can't find any reference to what we know as the plant toxins, such as oxalates, lectins, goitrogens, saponins, phytates, etc., etc. Those words that are very familiar to us would not necessarily been familiar to him. However, he was aware of the fact that plants were toxic to the human body, which is why he very much recommended a meat-heavy diet. He actually recommended about 2 to 4 pounds of meat a day. It was called the meat and water diet, or the Salisbury diet, and it is actually recognised in Wikipedia as an early version of the carnivore diet. Wikipedia also calls it a fad diet. Where have we heard that before? We've heard it obviously about the carnivore diet as well. So yeah, as I said, the second hero of the 19th century that I'd like to talk about is James H. Salisbury, the inventor of the Salisbury steak. Something which I hadn't really known too much about until such time as I studied him fairly recently. But I'm sure that my American friends over there, over the pond, will have heard of him very much so. Now, the third guy that I wish to talk about, if anybody's got any questions, by the way, just flag them up and we'll deal with them. We've got 1 or 2 people in chat. So, the real hero for me was the Englishman, William Banting. Now, William Banting was a well-known undertaker, a carpenter and an undertaker. He made coffins, basically, and he was very famous in London. He was asked to make the coffin for King George III, so he was an undertaker to royalty, which meant that he had a certain amount of power and influence within London. He was wealthy, but the only problem was he couldn't really enjoy it because he was metabolically very, very unwell, to the point where he was so fat that he began to lose his eyesight and his hearing. So he was going deaf and couldn't see. Now, as we know, your health is your wealth. Even though he had loads of money in the bank, he wasn't enjoying life. He was a very keen rower on the River Thames. He used to row all the time, and in his early days, as he was starting to gain fat and to gain weight, he believed that he could out-row a bad diet. He failed miserably, and all of his then standard medical doctors said, well, it's just part of getting older. You'll have to get used to it. There's nothing we can do about it. Go and eat plants, go and cut down on your energy intake and you'll be okay. But all that happened is he continued to get metabolically unwell, continued to pile on the weight, and became very desperate. Now, he was kind of lucky in as much as that he started to go deaf. So instead of going to his regular GP, he instead went to a specialist ENT, ear, nose and throat specialist in Soho Square in London, which is quite a famous square in London. It's now known as very much a bohemian area where you get the left of centre people. But back in those days, it was kind of the forerunner to Harley Street, which is the main medical street in London now. And in Soho Square, he found himself a physician called Dr. William Harvey. Now, Dr. William Harvey had just come back from a Paris symposium on diabetes mellitus, which was heralded by a Frenchman called Claude Bernard. Now, he recognized the fact that the liver was probably the source of the problem of diabetes mellitus, and he recognized hyperglycemia, which we are familiar with, which means a lot of blood sugar. So he was a proponent of he was one of the early proponents of the low carb, high fat diet, because he noted that it cured type 2 diabetes because of the reduction in your blood sugar. And at the same time, the byproduct of it, which I think most of us have experienced, myself in particular, is that weight loss is involved. So when he had this very fat man called William Banting turn up, who was going blind and had virtually gone deaf, it gave him a great opportunity to test his theory that basically if he could get him to lose weight, he guessed that his hearing would return. So this is exactly what happened. He gave him a diet. Now the diet is very interesting because obviously they were feeling around in the dark back in those days, but it was very heavily meat based, and it meant cutting out all the starchy foods, such as your breads, your potatoes, anything that was recognized as starchy. Although very dry toast was allowed, and certain of the low carb vegetables were as well. But it was a typical breakfast of kidneys, bacon, steak, anything like that. A lot of fish involved as well. And then your tea time would be your vegetarian dish with the dried toast and a dish of tea and some vegetables. And then you would be back for your fourth meal of the day, would be heavily meat based. Now, it became known as the Banting diet. Now, I was a man who I'm 3.5 years into my journey since March of 2022. And for 3 of those years, I carried on drinking alcohol fairly heavily. So it's arguable that I was on the Banting diet because I was on a low carb, high fat, but with alcohol. Now, Dr. William Harvey, the ear, nose and throat physician, believed in the medicinal effects of alcohol. I'm sure we've all heard of that. And he actually prescribed, and I mean prescribed, a bottle of wine a day, a bottle of claret a day for William Banting, and also a nightcap of a large whiskey brandy, or I think probably whiskey or brandy back in those days, or grog as it was known then. So he was drinking a bottle of wine a day on doctor's orders and grog. He was also rowing as well, so he was taking his exercise still. The difference being that now he was on low carb, high fat, even with the alcohol, he started losing weight very rapidly. And what do you know? His eyesight returned, as did his hearing.
Wow.
So basically, he achieved the results that he wanted. And of course, Dr. William Harvey was very excited about this because it proved his theory, which picked up from Claude Bernard over in Paris. So that's the story so far. Nikki, do you want to ask me anything? There is more to tell about the William Banting story, but I shall give you a chance to ask any questions or give me any feedback so far.
I would like to hear more about him, but how long did it take for him to experience a change in his health?
Months, same as all of us. It was a very similar time. I think he lost 56 pounds very early, and then carried on. After about 6 months, his hearing had returned. It's something which I haven't got the figures in front of me for, but they're very easily found in Wikipedia or anything on the Banting diet. You will find the actual figures there, but it's the same as many of us have found, and that's it. That he lost it very quickly. Hearing returned because there was no fat surrounding his deaf ear. His eyesight returned, as I've heard many people talking about. Unfortunately, as you can tell from my glasses, it's the one thing which I don't appear to be actually regaining properly on Carnivore, but it's all a different experience for us. Anyway, so to continue, he was so impressed that he felt that he wanted to tell the world. He wanted to let the world know that there was a solution to obesity, or to use the 19th century English term, corpulence. Obviously, corpulence, as we know, corp is the body. So basically, corpulent meant excess body, too much body, which I certainly had because my story started at 293 pounds, and as of this morning was around the 173 pound mark. So I have actually lost 120 pounds myself in the course of the last 3.5 years. So yes, I fully understand the handicap that is corpulence, obesity, just being fat basically. as our
Or
great
being
friend.
too skinny and weak. That,
Yeah, or being too skinny and weak. That's true. It's not something I've ever had to worry about myself. Certainly being weak, but not being too skinny. I was all, yeah, it's absolutely, Nikki. We all have a different story. But as I know, you are type 1 diabetic. I was type 2 diabetic, and obviously with type 1, it is you can't do the fat story, so it is basically a starvation condition which has to be managed, which I do understand. But I was a type 2 diabetic, and so I imagine William Banting was as well. So he was so enthused about this that he actually decided that the world needed to know. So he wrote a leaflet, a pamphlet, if you like. It was in book form, and it was called A Letter on Corpulence Addressed to the Public in 1863. It's not very long. You can still find it online if you go and look for it, and you can still read it. But he was just so enthusiastic that he wanted the world to know. So he published it, and very many desperate people, because there were desperate people back in those days as well as today, they bought it, they read it, and they went and acted on it. And hey, what do you know? Again, n equals 1, and suddenly there was lots of n equals 1, and they were all reporting the same benefits that we are now reporting some 100 and whatever it is years on. Is it nearly, well, it's a better part of 150 years on. So it was known about. Now, the original pamphlet, he was so generous that he actually issued it for free, because all he wanted to do was help humanity. So he was actually on a mission which you might call healing humanity 150 years ago. He was definitely the forerunner of our modern day movement. So William Banting is my hero. Now, when he actually he ran out of his original draft printing, so he had to print again. But obviously, it's not cheap. So he actually then, the second run of the Letter on Corpulence was he produced as a commercial venture. He only covered the cost of printing, but again, that sold out. Now, what happens when basically the entire population is curing themselves and making doctors look foolish? Doctors do not like that very much, do they? As we know. So, yeah, he received some massive pushback from the medical industry, as it was then. It was before Rockefeller had taken over the pharmaceuticals, but even so, it was you were supposed to eat your veg. You were supposed to you were able to outrun a bad diet, and of course your diet was supposed to be vegetables because they're healthy, aren't they? Everybody knows that, and it was the same back in those days. So he received a massive pushback from the medical industry. He was known for quackery, which is obviously a very detrimental term from the medical industry. Everybody pointed out the fact that he was a carpenter, that he had no medical training whatsoever. The fact that it came from a Dr. William Harvey seemed to get overlooked. And it came from a great physician or physiologist called Claude Bernard. Look him up, Claude Bernard. Claude Bernard, basically in English. So it came from Claude Bernard through Dr. William Harvey to William Banting, but the medical industry decided to pick only on William Banting, so he was basically discredited. He lived until he was 82 years of age and died in 1878. And with him, in many ways, his knowledge died because the medical industry had no interest in patients being cured, because it made them look stupid, and they do not like to be made to look stupid. So in 1878, he died, having had enormous success. He lived to a decent age for those days of 82. It was back in the days of Victorian England when the Thames was polluted. It was part of the Industrial Revolution, so people were drinking dirty water, breathing in very dirty air, so they were tending to die younger anyway. So that is the story of William Banting. Now, the interesting knock-on effect is that over in South Africa, the Banting diet, alongside the carnivore diet, became very, very popular. In fact, the term Banting became a verb. To bant meant to follow the William Banting diet. And it was actually in South Africa that as the carnivore diet developed, so they tended still to refer it to the Banting diet. Professor Tim Noakes, who is kind of their way leader over there, he is our pathfinder in South Africa. He was very keen on the Banting diet. Now, Professor Tim Noakes is interesting because he was a great athlete, a marathon runner, and he wrote a book about how to train for marathons, which included a chapter on carb loading. In later life, he got diabetes, couldn't understand it, went away, did the research, discovered that the carb loading was utter nonsense, had to retract the chapter from that book, had to issue an apology and reissue that book without that chapter. Instead, it was all about low carb, high fat and training. And he actually founded the Noakes Foundation over in South Africa, which is their leading low carb organisation. I have a great friend here in the UK who is South African herself, and she is an ambassador to the Noakes Foundation. Big shout out to my great friend Louise Benning. She appears on just about as many carnivore YouTubers as me, if not more, and she seems to know everybody in the carnivore world. She and I are just organising an event here in the UK, and I said, who should we invite? And she suddenly produced this massive long list of superstars who I never dreamt I would meet, who've all written books. They've all very famous in our world, and now they're coming to our Christmas party. So she's a big shout out to Louise because she gets everywhere. Got some fabulous photographs of her with her son Jackson and Dr. Kiltz. Very interesting story. Her own story is very interesting. However, Jackson's is also very interesting because Jackson is a Down syndrome child. And I mistakenly asked her live once, oh, I hear that Jackson suffers from Down syndrome. She said, no, you are very wrong, George. He does not suffer from Down syndrome, but he has Down syndrome. He doesn't. I met him back in the summer, and he is living, and yeah, let's call it a normal life. He's in a normal school, and he is very, very highly articulate, and he is very, very quick to make conversation. There is a slight speech impediment there, and he asked me what I was eating. I heard it as reading, so I told him that I read carnivore books. He said, "You can't eat books." So yeah, so I got a bit of a telling off for being stupid, which I don't blame him because let's face it, I am. And I then told him that I was eating steak and no vegetables, and he totally approved. I was wearing my flat cap back in those days, and he was so impressed by his new friend George that he insisted on going home, and Louise had to go and get him a cap, which he now wears. And I got a photograph the other day. I think I was known as a mini me. I did post it on our WhatsApp group. And somebody did remark about the fact that, he looked like a mini version of me. And I had to point out that I know Louise very well, but I don't know her that well. But I certainly haven't known her long enough. So there we go. Let's scotch any rumours there. So, yeah, that was William Banting and how it led to the Noakes Foundation and the Banting diet over in South Africa. How he was the original, if you like, the low carb, high fat, one of the pioneers, and how it gave him massive success, how it gave other people around him massive success, and how the medical industry hated him. So we are now into the 20th century, and what do you know? History repeats itself, and we will look at that in the future. Okay, so that's that's. If you've got any questions, Nicky, or if there's anything else you want to talk about, we can talk about my life in the army if you want. We can talk about my life in general. You can tell us about your life, or we can have any questions. I see you put up the StreamYard. If anybody wants to jump on, I suspect that's the reason why Nicky put up the StreamYard, because that's what usually happens. So yeah, let's open the floor to yourself, and we'll see where the conversation takes us. We still have another 25 minutes, so let's just have a chat.
Well, I'm actually curious about your. Thank you very much, by the way. I find that fascinating. I'd like to have another round, actually.
Oh, we will. Don't worry. We've still got a lot of heroes to look at, but that will take us into the next century. So we'll look at the 20th century at the
You have more
next
heroes that you
episode
can
of
talk
this.
about.
Oh, the 20th century is full of them. It really is. It really is full of heroes, as is our century now. But I need to go away and do some research. I'll mention a couple of names. Professor Philip Randall, who discovered the Randall cycle in 1963. Professor John Yudkin, who wrote Pure, White and Deadly in 1971. Various other people as well. Can't think who they are off the top of my head. Yeah, the people obviously who did and I've yet to really do some serious research on these, so I can't give any names yet. But in the 1920s, the ketogenic diet was studied to alleviate the symptoms of epilepsy in children. It's really where the ketogenic diet was, the word ketogenic was launched versus low carb, high fat. I need to go and do some research on that. I need to be able to give you some names and some history on that. So I'm a bit vague on that one, but certainly the Philip Randall one and Professor John Yudkin. There's various others as well, which I can't remember off the top of my head. And then going forward into this century, we have people like Dr. Kristin Kearns, who unveiled the history of the Harvard corruption, how they were totally bought off by the Sugar Research Foundation. The lovely Dr. Anthony Chaffee always refers to the three Harvard shills. He never used to mention their names. I wanted to know their names, so I went and researched and found Dr. Kristin Kearns, discovered who they were. We'll do a separate section on villains later on. So yeah, we have lots and lots of heroes in our world who we will still talk about. We will probably be able to cover the 20th and the 21st century in one episode next week. Yeah, so yeah, we do have some heroes. Everybody knows the villains, Ansel Keys and the Ellen Gould Whites and the McGovern report and all of that, and the food pyramid. We all know about that, and but a lot of the time the heroes get forgotten because they were largely unsuccessful, and as much as they didn't win the battle at the time. However, what they did do was they kept the flame alive, and they allowed it, and they kept the flame alive enough for us to have it to take on the torch. We've now become the torch bearers for them. They are trying to put that torch out, of course. But when we have people such as ourselves, and people like the fantastic Kerry Mann, and the warrior who is Lynn Tucker Carnivore down in South Carolina, she and I were having a conversation last night, and we were very much in battle mode. And I said I'm proud to stand alongside her. As long as we've got people like us, the torch will not die, but we mustn't let it die. We must pass it on, and it is fabulous that within our group we have the amazing 16-year-old Alia English, who has written her own book. So it's called Carnivore Diet for Teens. My lovely wife Lainey ordered it for me on Friday night. It's due to arrive tomorrow. So yeah, go out and look up. It's on Amazon. Carnivore Diet for Teens by Alia English. Now I'm pronouncing it the Arabic way because it actually means high or tall in Arabic. It's Aliyyah. Alia is the actual pronunciation in Arabic. For example, if you wanted to say, sorry,
Is she Arabic background?
I wouldn't. I don't think so. No, I think it's probably just it's a common name. But there are lots and lots of Arabic names which find their way into Anglicization. I don't think she's actually Arabic herself. So I can't think of many off the top of my head now. But there are plenty of names that find their way into the. I mean, for example, Carl is German and it's turned up in English as a K. There's lots of other crossovers. Yeah, so Aliyyah, Alia English, and she is amazing. She is very prolific on her channel. An amazing story. She is just because she's trying to launch her own business. Which includes a small holding or a farm with some excellent chickens and ducks and geese. She loves showing those off on YouTube. She's had to take a job, and ironically, she has taken a job recently in Dunkin' Donuts, and it's all about money, folks. But she says she stands there and she sees these poor people come in, and she has to serve them, what she doesn't want to, but she just feels sorry for them. But I better not say too much, just in case her bosses watch this. In the very, very unlikely event her bosses watch this, so I'll leave that subject alone. But what I'm saying is, it's absolutely marvelous that we have in our group a range of people from 16, and I think we got a potential business partner of hers, Joe, who is a little bit older, right the way through to people well into their 70s. I can't. The lady I will flag up is Amy, who is on with us, I think last week. She's into her 70s, a fellow type 1 diabetic like yourself, Nikki, but she's been type 1 diabetic for 55 years now, and she has an amazing story of control. She's very, very fit, and very much in trim. She was married to a very famous painter back in the day, and she was actually his life model, and she took that very seriously and has maintained that at the age of 71, has maintained that model figure. So all due respect to Amy. So that's what I'm saying. We are now us, the older generation, are leading the way, but we have to pass the torch on to the next generation. So we have to keep that torch burning, and we have to make sure there are people like Elliot and Joe coming through behind us. We've got plenty of people in their 40s. Richard Smith, Keto Pro, is 41 over here. I made a great friend over in Wyoming called Angela Lero, who is 40. So we kind of have those people coming through. I reckon I've got, hopefully, with my new health, I'm 60 now, I reckon I've got another 20 good years of work in front of me. Not just good life, but of work in front of me. And it might even go beyond that. For example, my namesake, Professor John B. Goodenough, actually won the Nobel Prize for chemistry for his work with batteries at the age of 90, and he was still working in the University of Texas. Professor John B. Goodenough, if anybody's interested. He's not carnivore or anything, but he did win the Nobel Prize for chemistry, and he is my uncle. No, he's not. But yes. I wish he was, but no, he isn't. He did actually die shortly afterwards, but he did win the Nobel Prize for chemistry. So us Goodenough are out there anyway. Well, that was a good rant. So where should we take it from here, Nikki? It's you the boss. You're the host. You're the host with the most.
I'd like to hear more about your process with reversing diabetes.
Oh, okay, that's fair enough. Yeah, I always enjoy telling this story. So yeah, it all started on March 1st, 2022. As you can see, I'm a veteran of the First Gulf War, medals and everything. And that's my desert rat patch, by the way. That demonstrates the fact that I was in 7th Armoured Brigade, known as the Desert Rats. They were very famous in the Second World War, and they were kind of reformed for the for Desert Storm. And that was the same badge that was worn in North Africa during the Second World War. So there is something out there which is known as Gulf War syndrome. Gulf War illness is another name of it, and it has lots and lots of symptoms. If you go on to Google and look up Gulf War illness or Gulf War syndrome symptoms, you'll find them. And what do you know? I was suffering all of them. Having to go wee a lot, getting very, very fat, absolute fatigue, skin infections, you name it, I was getting it. So I had assumed that I had a very bad reaction to the anthrax vaccine over in the Gulf, because I was given that on the 15th of February 1991 out in the desert, and it crippled me for about 24 hours afterwards down my left side because it was given into my left arm. Now, a lot of the
Crippled
pains...
how?
Sorry?
Crippled as in how? Like paralyzed
Really,
or
crippling pain down my left side, down my left arm and left leg. So I was, for example, I couldn't get underneath the camouflage netting to get back to my vehicle when I'd done a patrol. I had to actually sort of get down on the floor and roll in rather than just duck down. It meant that my left leg became a very painful passenger to my right leg. I did my best to disguise it as best I could because we were in the middle of the air war back then, and what I didn't want to do was appear like a coward, get a white feather for declaring myself ill just before we were about to launch the ground attack. So I had to, or the invasion of the counter invasion of Kuwait. In fact, we invaded Iraq, but that's a different story. So I hid it as best I could, and after about 24 to 36 hours, the symptoms went away. But as I got older and fatter and iller, the symptoms came back. Again, that pain, that fibromyalgia, that neuropathy pain in the thighs, all the joint pain, all the immobility, all the fatigue, it all came flooding back. And I was barking up entirely the wrong tree. I thought it had everything to do with the Gulf War, with the toxins that we breathed in, the possibility of depleted uranium in the air where our tank buster missiles had actually destroyed the Iraqi armor but had released depleted uranium into the air. There was a rumor of a sarin plant at a place called Khamsin being destroyed by in the aftermath of the war, and sarin was inadvertently let loose into the atmosphere. Certainly, I was there on a day when the oil fires was burning so fiercely that at 11 o'clock in the morning it went pitch black, to the point where we had an impromptu firework display because we had quite a lot of pyrotechnics left after the battle, because the battle was over. And we had a bit of a firework display, and we got into a lot of trouble because somebody thought that we were under attack, and that we very nearly started the war again. But thankfully we didn't. So I breathed in a lot of rubbish out there. I received a lot of injections into my arm. I'm allowed to say that in the context of the first Gulf, because it did happen. And there were just a lot. NAPS tablets as well, nerve agent protection system tablets. They had never been really tested in a battlefield environment. We were afraid that Saddam Hussein was going to launch nerve agent against us. So we had the preemptive strike of taking nerve agent protection system, and it had never been battlefield tested. So we were the guinea pigs as usual. So I basically believed that all the symptoms I was suffering was to do with the Gulf War. And I was desperately trying to get a diagnosis as such. But the government doesn't want to give a diagnosis of Gulf War syndrome because it would open the floodgates and everybody would be actually receive compensation. I was afraid. I have a house, a mortgage that had to be paid. And I suddenly saw myself being homeless with my wife. I didn't really want that. So I received nothing but hostility from the government, the NHS. I went to see a rheumatologist. She said there's nothing wrong with me, but she did notice about the fact that my BMI was over 40, so I was morbidly obese. So I got nowhere. Eventually, I went to my own doctor, and she made a mistake. She claimed to have examined me physically, personally, whereas she hadn't. She'd only given me a phone consultation. So when she said that when she examined me physically, she found this, I said, "You are lying. You've never examined me." He said, "Yes, I have." I said, "No, you are lying. I am now going to take legal action against you because this is obviously corruption, and it's longer than I suspected. You are gaslighting me, basically." Within 10 minutes, she phoned back, apologised, and I was given an hour-long consultation with her the next day. Oh, sorry, no, I was given... She examined me as a result of my blood test, which showed that I had type 2 diabetes. And then she told me that she'd examined me. She hadn't. But so I was given an hour-long consultation with her the next day. She was in a lot of trouble for that, I suspect, because I had a very good case to take it to litigation, which I didn't, because she basically tried to make it good. She was very hostile towards me. I could see the contempt in her eyes. I could see that she blamed me for the mess that I was in. We discovered that I was a long way down the road of morbid obesity, high triglycerides, diabetes, neuropathy, not so bad. I could feel the gentle taps on my toes and that sort of thing. But she was hostile. I was talking about my myelin sheaths. I was probably barking up the right tree, actually. Looking back on it, she said no, that I didn't know that I was talking about, and I should mind my own business when it comes to these things. And then basically she said, "That's it. You've got type 2 diabetes. You're morbidly obese. Here's the 2 prescriptions, metformin and statins. Go away, cash those in, take them. You're going to be fat for the rest of your life, and we're going to have to manage it. You're going to be a type 2 diabetic for the rest of your life." So after an hour of getting round of hostility, and at least she gave me an hour's consultation, I left her office, clutching in my left hand the couple of, sort of, I was clutching the prescriptions, and my phone went off. And so I answered the phone, as you do, and it was actually from within that surgery, from the other side of the surgery. It was a nurse called Kathy Moran. Never forget her. And she said, George, has Dr. A finished with you? I said, yes, she has. She said, come and see me. So I went over to her office and walked in. She said, take a seat. She sat me down and she said, George, you've got type 2 diabetes. And I said, yes, I have. She said, okay, let's have a look at this. She said, what do you eat? So I said, well, normally I eat bread, I eat pasta, I eat rice, I eat meat, I eat lots of curry. I like curry. Oh, chili con carne. Oh, I love chili con carne. Steak and chips. Absolutely love chips, being French fries here in the UK versus your potato chips. So steak and chips, we'll call it. Oh, lovely onion rings. I do like my onion rings and tomatoes. Oh, I like a full English breakfast with all the hash browns and the fried bread and everything else. Oh, and I'll have triple decker ham sandwiches for my lunch. Heavy carbohydrate diet. However, look back at that and you will find that there was nothing in there which tasted of sugar, because I was well aware that sweet sugar is dangerous. So she looks at me. All carbs are sugar. 4 words. 4 words that we have come across on this course that we're doing with Dr. Kiltz. 4 words that saved my life. Kathy Moran is a hero of mine. Anyway, so I went away. My first reaction was, what, even the carbs that don't taste of sugar, even the ones that aren't sweet? She said, yes, they are all carbs turned to glucose in your bloodstream. So I sat there thinking, I can do this because I like meat. I can eat steak. I can eat bacon. I can eat sausages. I can eat chicken. I can eat fish. I can eat eggs. I thought, and my last words to her as I left that office were, we can do this. Now, the recommendation when it comes to type 2 diabetes, when it comes to weight loss, is to lose 5% of your body weight. Here I am, 3.5 years on, I've lost 40%, 40% of my body weight. So yeah, so 5% just seemed like, I lost 5% of my body weight in the first 3 weeks. So and she's in a much better place now. By that I don't mean heaven, I mean a much better surgery just up the road. I have now moved into a much more veteran friendly surgery, but I was able to track her down. I was able to send a thank you email to the practice where she is now. She didn't acknowledge it herself, but the practice manager did. She said, it's amazing, your story. I'm going to pass this on to Nurse Kathy. So I'm confident that Nurse Kathy found out that I kept my word and that we did it. Yeah. So thanks, Nurse Kathy. So here I am, 3.5 years later, 120 pounds lighter. My HbA1c has gone from 6.7% down to 5.1% in your terms. The last nurse to deal with me was Nurse Abby. She said that I was the most spectacular success story when it came to reversing type 2 diabetes that she personally had ever seen. She said, I wish I could get you in to talk to my less successful diabetics. And I said, you can't do that. She said, well, why not? I said, because you'll get struck off, because it goes against everything you've ever been taught. She said, yeah, it does. You're absolutely right, George. There's nothing I can do about it. She said, but one thing, telling things to say, she said, however, the narrative is changing. And she says, give it 10 years and the narrative will have changed to the point where what you are doing will be acceptable. So everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people are saying, oh, we're not really making any ground. They're pushing back against us. We're going to disappear. No, we're not. We're here to stay.
No. Yeah. Yeah, we are here to stay. How can you turn your back on that, right?
You can't, because
I
it's,
would say, well, how would you assist those in denial? Like they're actually in the system, but they're actually they know, but what and they have all this guilt, right? How would you help them transition you that guilt and shame
They had to be
because
desperate.
they want to
They
do
had to be.
good, but pardon?
They had to be truly desperate. Now, I'll give you two examples, two people. One is a guy who is very, very close to me in the call. He was during training. He was my roommate, but he stayed in the army. He stayed right the way through. He then left and joined the government service. So he is government through and through. He is establishment through and through. Now he is overweight. I won't say obese. He's not, but he's overweight. He is type 2 diabetic with high blood pressure. He knows my story. I have offered to help him, but because he is so brainwashed by the establishment, he will only trust his doctors. And he says, "Oh, but it's genetic. My doctors tell me this. My doctors tell me that." He's managing. He's not getting any worse, but he's not getting any better.
Mm.
So in the meantime, I have left him far behind me in my wake, and I haven't got time to go back and pick him up anymore because I've given him the chance. The contrasting story is somebody I was working with in the construction industry last year, a man called Lee, who is 41 years of age, very overweight, with a much younger wife and a 3-year-old child, and an HbA1c in my country of 89. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's going to be huge because I was 50 at 6.7% and I was 32 at 5.1%. So if you go up to 89, you're going to see that is a very high percentage in your terms. He was scared, genuinely scared.
Takes a while because you go through a denial. Did you go through
Absolutely.
a denial?
Yeah, he did. But then he became so scared because he knew that type 2 diet, he was having to have his HbA1c every 6 weeks. Usually it's every year, or in bad cases, every 6 months. Sorry, no, every 3 months. It was every 12 to 13 weeks.
In
Yeah,
Canada here.
yeah, exactly. So he had to have every 3 months, which is virtually unheard of here in the UK. Even though I was diabetic, I was only once a year, but he was such risk that he had to have it every 3 months. So he
Yeah.
knew my story because as with all successful carnivores, I was not exactly slow in advertising in the workplace. So he was desperate. He was scared. He had a why. He had a younger wife, and a young son, and he was afraid that he was going to leave them without a father.
Yep.
Yeah. So he
Yeah,
reached
we
out to
all.
me. Yeah. So he
Yeah, we
reached
all
out
have.
to me and said, "George, how can you help me?" I said, "We need to look at your nutrition. We need to put you on what is known as a ketogenic diet." I said, "Would you be interested in carnivore?" He said, "Oh no, I like my tomatoes too much." Okay, that's not the problem. I won't try and tell you about lectins because tomatoes themselves are low carb. He used to love his big beef tomatoes, and he used to love his mushrooms with his steak and that sort of thing. So I thought, okay, we can do this. I said, "You've got to get rid of the potatoes." Promise me. Yep, I'll get rid of the potatoes. So he got rid of the potatoes, potato chips, the French fries, and if you would have a steak, you would have tomatoes and mushrooms and maybe a few fried onions with them, so low carb. So we successfully got him into the low carb world. He lost about 14 pounds of weight, which is a stone over here, and he went back, I think, after being 89. He came to me virtually the day after he got that diagnosis, which is a massive percentage. Next time he went back, after 3 months of coming to see me, he measured 49 on the HbA1c, which was
Wow.
actually which is a point below what I was when I was in at 6.7%.
Wow.
So he dropped 40 points in British terms, and he was just 1 point into type 2 diabetes. So he made incredible progress in 3 months. He was absolutely delighted. I said, "Lee, you carry on doing what you're doing, and in 3 months' time,
It
you
could
will no
only
longer
get better.
you will no longer be type 2 diabetic." So I predicted to him that he would be no longer type 2 diabetic in 3 months. 3 months time went back. I think he had a blood sugar score of about 39, which is 3 points below pre-diabetes here in the UK. Bingo. 6 months, he'd gone from being afraid of dying to feeling incredibly healthy and no longer in danger of an immediate heart attack or anything. And that was merely because he reached out to me and he listened. He acted. He was desperate. He was afraid. But it took
Well,
that.
thank goodness he reached out to you and you were able to help him. That's wonderful. More of
Yeah,
these stories need to be told, and right, how are they going to know if we don't keep talking about it, right?
exactly. But I
Things can
say that,
easily be
yeah. But the
things
sad
can
thing
be easily
is yeah,
transformed. And, yeah.
exactly. But the sad thing is the contrast with my pro-establishment friend who wouldn't listen to me, and he's still struggling. He's doing okay, but he's still struggling. Oh, type 1 story as well, Nikki. My friend Dave, he was a very wealthy man. He made a lot of money, mainly through pharmaceutical sales. He was the son of a doctor, and he was a type 1 diabetic. Because he was a pharmaceutical salesperson and the son of an allopathic doctor, he absolutely believed in maintaining his type 1 diabetes using insulin and using all those methods. Didn't look after himself. I used to try and encourage him to do exercise with me. Didn't. Too lazy. Used to take the dog for a walk. That would do me. Didn't look after himself. Trusted the system. Trusted his mother's view on type 1 diabetes. It could only be managed with insulin. He used to sit in the pub, inject himself with insulin. Um,
He would
uh,
sit in the pub.
yeah, literally sit in the pub drinking and inject himself with insulin through his trousers in the
Oh,
pub. I know, exactly. So what hope do you have? But insulin would
wow.
solve everything as a type 1 diabetic. It would solve all his problems. He kind of moved away. I lost contact with him probably for a few years. Next thing I heard, he lost a couple of toes through diabetic neuropathy. Still believed in the system. Still taking the insulin. Shortly after he lost his toes, next thing I knew, I was told that Dave went to sleep last night and never woke up this morning at the age of 57. So
Wow.
that was a type 1 diabetic who trusted the system, who trusted the drug insulin, trusted that if he did everything his mother and his doctor told him, then he would manage his type 1 diabetes. He died a millionaire. But what's the point? If you're going to die, there's no point in being the richest man in the graveyard, is there? You're far better off looking after your health than what you are your wealth. So, and again, another very, very sad story.
Very,
Um,
and
I've
so
lost about yeah,
unnecessary.
exactly. I've probably lost about 8 people in the. No, actually, my best friend from boot camp died last Friday of cancer. Complications from cancer. Again, he had become very fat. Hadn't looked after himself. On the 5th of September, he put out a goodbye message on Facebook, and then he died last Friday.
Mm, sorry to hear
No, the
that.
Friday before, I should say. So yeah, 9 days ago.
Mm,
He died. He died within 2 weeks of putting out the fact that he'd been diagnosed with cancer, and he had lots of other complications as well. It was too late for me to save him. On that day, I did tell him about Professor Seafree, but he was so far gone that it wouldn't have done any good to him anyway. So I've lost, yeah, probably about 8 people to type 2 diabetes associated heart attacks, type 1 diabetes associated heart attacks, and cancer in the last 3 years. Last 4 years since I started. All
yeah,
in their
and so what
50s.
the
Yeah,
world would benefit from more knowledge on metabolic health and how it's
exactly.
affecting
Yeah,
all these diseases that you mentioned above, right? Like
yeah. And just a
how
quick
many
note on that.
diseases are not involved with metabolic dysfunction?
Exactly
How
right.
many, like, you know?
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
very, very
Um,
few.
George, we're just
Yeah,
at the top of
we're on
the
the
hour.
hour.
Just top of the hour. Yeah,
We've had a very good talk.
we
Just a
did.
quick word on all the people that I've lost. The oldest was 69. The youngest was in their 50s. So they were all in their 50s and 60s. None of them made 70. A lot of them didn't make 60. I just have. So I've beaten the 59 club, which included my sister-in-law many years ago. She had a DVT which was associated with cancer treatment. Yeah, so there we go. But as you say, Nikki, we've had a really good chat. I've really enjoyed it. I haven't had many of our friends in the chat, but hopefully some people might pick this up on the replay, and
Yeah,
we might get some comments.
yeah.
You never know.
I just want to say I tried to, for some reason, I couldn't bring the comments up today. They worked last
Uh,
time, but they're not coming on today. So Bill was up there the
okay,
whole day. We highlighted Bill. Thanks, Bill.
yeah, we did exactly. I mean, the thing is,
And
all
your
of
pictures,
Nikki, all of us have got a lot to learn. We are baby YouTubers. Some of us are progressing quicker than others. Wretched Stephanie, for example, she's too good, isn't she? And we got one or two other like Bob Angle, I should say, who's Carnivore Talk. He's very, very good as well. He's a good techno person. And then you got the likes of me who can't even put up a two-screen StreamYard as yet. And
Mhm.
then obviously yourself, you showed evidence that you kind of got there because you managed to get one picture up, and you managed to get a split screen, so you got me on as well. But we've
And you
got
know
lots to
what?
learn.
I've tried to bring up the other pictures, but the only one, and it look, I'm literally pressing on the different pictures, but it only wanted to bring up Dominic.
Yeah, we kept
Seriously,
on seeing
I was
good
putting,
old
I have
Dominic
all your
Larry.
pictures here.
Yeah,
It only
don't worry.
wanted to put up Dominic today, so I guess Dominic was supposed to be there too.
He was the star of the show today. The man who the man who proved that meat could cure scurvy or prevent scurvy. Anyway, Nick, it's gone the hour now, so we better wrap things on the head. And it's been lovely being again. I bet we've got about 1 million messages on the WhatsApp group, so I'm going to go and address things like that. I'm probably going to go and have another cup of coffee. Oh, terrible! I still drink coffee, by the way. Yeah, so exactly. So right, I am actually going to say good night because I've got to go and deal with a few things, and I look forward to next week when we will look at some more heroes of our world. Good night,
Oh,
everybody.
good night.
Bye. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.